Happy Thursday and welcome to this week's edition of Offit Kurman's Remote Rundown. I'm Jim Reese, Director of Business Development at Offit Kurman, and I'm joined here with labor and employment attorneys Russell Berger, Sarah Sawyer, and Veronica Yu. So small businesses are applying for the Families First and apply for and should use the small business exemption. Tell us what we should be thinking about.
Yeah, so when we're talking Families First leave, we're talking about the paid sick and safe leave and the expanded FMLA leave. And a lot of small businesses assume that they're subject to this small business exemption, but that's not necessarily always the case. So in order for the small business exemption to apply, you have to have under 50 employees, and it only applies to leave requests relating to the closure of schools and daycares and the unavailability of childcare due to COVID-19. In addition, you also have to meet certain criteria relating to really whether your business can operate at a minimal capacity without that employee there. So you're looking at whether the expense or the financial obligations will outweigh your business revenue, whether the absence of the employee will impact the financial health or operational capabilities of the business, and whether there's enough manpower to operate at a minimal capacity. And this is a case-by-case analysis for each employee that requests this leave, and employers have to make sure that this is documented. And unless you meet all these criteria, you still have to apply the Families First leave to each employee.
Yeah, so from an employment perspective, there's really two fundamental questions that have to be satisfied in order for the exemption to apply. Number one, are you under 50 employees? And that can be a little bit tricky because if you have multiple entities that have, maybe you have 3 entities that each have 20 employees working for them, if those entities are interrelated enough, you could combine them. You could be over 50 employees, in this case 60, and then you wouldn't be eligible to apply the exemption. So that's kind of the first preliminary question. Then the second question is, do I qualify for one of the specific exemptions, whether it be because it's going to put me out of business financially or operationally? And the way obviously there's no case law on this because it's still a new law and hasn't been litigated enough. But some of the suggestions in the Department of Labor's guidance really makes these exemptions a high bar. And what it kind of gets to is honoring the Families First leave being requested is going to put you out of business, whether that's because of a cash flow issue, whether it's because the responsibilities of the person, maybe it's a manager, a key employee you really need running the show. But it's really kind of like life or death of the business, because the way the DOL looks at it, if there's no business to come back to, then what's the point of the leave?
Another question to ask yourself is the practical part of, if it's a key employee that you really need to help run the business, how quickly are you really, if you deny them leave the business, how quickly are you really going to be able to find someone to replace them? And what are the actual practical applications of using this exemption instead of providing leave, instead of trying to work with the employee to see if maybe you can do intermittent leave, or if there's some kind of way to resolve this? So yeah, I think employers are really finding that when they take a look at whether this applies, even if it does apply to them, they have to really give some thought to whether practically it makes sense for them to move forward in that way. And I would say that that's true in a lot of different contexts, even outside of COVID. So, I would look at like FMLA leave, fee exemption, restoration pieces of that. Often you find as well, like, all right, well, would you rather try to, work with this employee, bring them back? I mean, by the time that the leave runs out, are you going to be able to find a replacement for that person? Is it going to make sense, even if you can make the exception under the law? And it really ends up turning out often that it makes more sense to try to work with the employee than to actually end up using the exemption, even if you do are able to make it.
That's a good time to pause, I think. I've got one last question for the three of you. As it relates to working from home, what time of day or night are you at your best? Sarah?
I'd say first thing in the morning, after I've gotten a walk in with the dog.
Russell?
I'd say after the kids are in bed, it's a little bit quieter, can focus a little bit more.
And Veronica?
I ditto Sarah's answer.
Early morning and after coffee.
Yep.
Great. All right, well, that's a wrap. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.